Welcome to the place of rest, where our aim is to give you language that helps you displace the growing confusion, chaos, and dis-ease of our times. My name is Jonathan Boyce, and it's my pleasure to bring to you today's episode. Virginia sits down with Kelly Hammond, a longtime student of the Principles of Rest, to discuss how they sustain her through suffering. We hope you enjoy today's conversation.
Kelly, welcome. You are near and dear to my heart because you were one of the first handful of students in our 40 weeks of rest coursework, and it was phenomenal. The conversations we had were just phenomenal, but I'd like our listening audience to know a little bit about your story, and then I want you to talk about rest. I want our listening audience to know who you are and share your unbelievable story.
Well, I guess I could start with how I found out about R.E.S.T. I saw the clip of Jane Nightbird, who was on America's Got Talent, and just so captivated by her immediately. So much of what she said resonated with me. And so having seen that, I heard that she had a blog, so I looked up the blog. And in her blog, she mentioned Virginia, Dixon, and R.E.S.T. So, of course, I looked you up and found you and found the podcast on Spotify. And I couldn't get enough. I listened to everyone and multiple times and wanted to take R.E.S.T. right away. But I know I couldn't go to California. So when I found out, I could do it online, I immediately signed up.
Wow, you listened to every single podcast?
Everyone that was on at that time, and have listened to everyone since.
Yes. Wow. What did you find most helpful? I'm just curious.
Oh my gosh. Well, with Luke, there's so many modalities that you have covered and your guests have been so instrumental in me learning things. And Dr. Sheldon, of course, and Steve Reeves with calming her, the frequencies, that I play for Luke and Heidi and Catherine. Everyone. From the very beginning, the house that built you and how you learn and love and attach and just myself learning, how I was raised, the house I came from, my parents' parents. Every single thing that you cover in R.E.S.T. is just foundational and it's really transforming. I've been able to apply it to so much of my life and so much more made sense having gone through R.E.S.T. But
you've been through quite a journey.
Oh, yes, ma'am. The story with Luke. Luke is my third child. Luke was born with a condition called congenital adrenal hyperplasia. We managed his whole life. But when he was 23 years old, he was sick and complications from the CAH. He was sicker than he knew, and Luke had a sudden cardiac arrest.
How old was he when he had?
23 years old.
23.
Yes, ma'am. And he was gone. His heart stopped and Luke was gone, and he had an anoxic brain injury. And as a result of that, they were able to, bring him back, but they gave us no hope for Luke. But God had other plans. We were in the hospital for 7 months, 2 months here in Wilmington. And then we flew to the Shepherd Center in Atlanta, Georgia for 5 more months during COVID. This was January 15th of 2020.
Wow.
It's just a nightmare. And Luke was discharged in August of 2020, but with all the same needs. He didn't emerge back into consciousness. He's still considered to be in a vegetative state due to the anoxic brain injury.
And how have you managed that all this time?
Oh my gosh. I can tell you, Virginia, if it were not for the Lord, Luke nor I would be here. By his grace and empowering him, his spirit is really the only way I have made
There's no words, is there? There's almost no words.
No, because it's 24/7. Even though we do have some nursing help that helps us with Luke, it's all consuming.
how do you stay healthy and well and beautiful? You're beautiful. How do you stay beautiful, well, healthy, loving, kind? And how do you live?
Well, I can tell you, Virginia, even what I learned in R.E.S.T, the body keeps a score. And, when there's emotional things in your life, it shows up physically. And all the stress and trauma. Luke was in ICU on a ventilator multiple times. Accidents happened, mistakes were made. This was not smooth sailing. And to live in a hospital for 7 months with your son with a brain injury, he's not spoken a word since this happened, nothing. And away from all the rest of my family, my other children and grandchildren, it has been so traumatic. And so my body began to scream. The lack of sleep, the stress and the worry.
You'd never know it looking at you.
That's a miracle. But I began to have all kinds of symptoms. And so I went to the doctor and he immediately sent me to a neurologist. They did a bunch of tests on me. They sent me all kinds of places. And bottom line, they said, is stress. And, the neurologist asked me, what's going on in your life? Thank goodness, most doctors you get 15 minutes with. But she asked me, she said, Kelly, what's going on in your life? And I told her, and I said, well, what are your thoughts? Because, she did a nerve and muscle conduction test. Everything was okay. And she said, Kelly, I think it's stress. You are under such prolonged stress. Your body is screaming out. And so I just have hung on by my fingernails for so long. But I tell you, it is the Lord. I give the Lord credit for, and what I've learned in R.E.S.T and what I've learned as a Christian, casting my cares on the Lord and trusting in Him. And I do know you need to exercise a little bit. You need to get out in the sunshine. And I like to walk and be around water, gravity, put my feet in, on the grass and all these things. I'm not on any medication. None. Did not want to go that route. And so things I have learned in R.E.S.T has just been a lifesaver for me.
So it has sustained you through this.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm thankful that you mentioned it because we need to live in a state of rest. And it's a discipline we have to acquire. And I'm thankful you mentioned all the people you did because it is growing in knowledge, I think, and an understanding of how our soul works through our brain and our body. And this fluid, crazy, sometimes chaotic rhythm of life. And when we can have a working understanding of the parts that make us whole, we don't have to panic when everything around us crumbles because it doesn't have to afflict every facet of our being. You mentioned God and you mentioned faith a number of times, and that realm is worth discovering and worth the effort to understand because there's something in that existential reality that we live with that we often don't think much about. But it's the very part of us that can transcend the brutality of our experiences. Because I don't know what is more painful to a mother than to watch her son suffer.
Oh,
and it's just, but I look at you and I think you've really developed the discipline of acquiring knowledge and understanding to help you understand the complexities of life and the complexity that makes up who you are too. The complexity of the things you have to navigate. And I think every time I think of you, Kelly, that's really your story. You turn to God because you realize there's something bigger that is outside of time, but somehow you show up in these experiences and You really are an inspiration. I just wonder if you can think of one lifeline from R.E.S.T that's been most instrumental. But can you be more specific about what sustained you during difficult times? Because for you, obviously, it's watching your son suffer. But for our listening audience right now, there are a variety of different things that are afflicting them. And perhaps they can find inspiration in your story or in some of the resources that we have.
I recommend R.E.S.T to everyone. Not everyone is going to have a son that has an anoxic brain injury and is considered in a vegetative state and has been for 5 years now. We just passed the 5-year mark, and which is just unbelievable to me. But I can tell you, God is my refuge and strength. I know for sure that He led me to R.E.S.T. He knew that I was going to need you, Virginia, and everything that R.E.S.T has taught me. I'm able to implement. I'll put my little earbuds in at night when I can and listen to the 528 hertz that Dr. Hammond talked us about.
Amazing.
Play those for Luke. The vibrations and the frequencies, it's not woo-woo. It's not anything crazy.
These are doctors. These are practitioners in the conventional medical field of many years that found these algorithms that are effective in regulating your nervous system. What do you do?
I haven't worked since the day this happened to Luke. I'm with him every day. They held my job for a long time for me, but I finally released them because I knew I had no idea when I could go back. I was a hairdresser by trade, but at the time I was working as a secretary and receptionist. So when we separated, I took a job for the first time in years because I had been a stay-at-home mom with my 3 children, homeschooled for a few years, but I went to be a waitress. And because I had let my cosmetology degree go. So I'm like, well, I'll just go be a waitress, and put my little foot back into the workforce. And so when I went, the guy was like, I had been to the restaurant before, and he's like, you want to work here? I said, yeah, I can work. I'm a worker. He said, there's no way. I said, yeah, absolutely. He said, you're like a pampered princess. I said, no, I'm not. And
you look like a princess.
He said, well, nobody will believe it. He said, until you open your mouth. He said, when you open your mouth and they see how genuine you are, you got it. I'm like, yes, I can do it. I can be a waitress. And I was for several years. Loved my customers and they loved me. And it was so not about the food. It was about connecting with the people and having a chance just to, and they would come in and ask for me just because of the conversation. And so,
Kelly, I don't know where you're headed, but it's a beautiful place. And like I said, it's hard to take you seriously when you talk about it's a matter of fact, it's hard to track with your story because you're so sweet. You're so radiant. You're so full of faith and strength and courage and light that it's hard to take you seriously.
People tell me that on my Facebook because they tell me, well, you're so inspirational. How do you do it? And I'm like, honest to God, I give God all the credit I do. Because
Jesus.
Amen. It is Jesus and the Holy Spirit, the fruit of the Spirit, because apart from you, I am a hot mess. True. And
I want to be you. I want to be you in my next life.
Oh, no, when the pendulum swings, like me, when you're very sweet, when the pendulum swings, I'm like, okay, now you're going to see another side.
So when you say you're with doctors all the time, it's because of the care, acute care.
Right. The doctors, there's a whole team of doctors from the neurologist and endocrinologist, pulmonologist, just a whole team of them. We're always at the doctor, one or the other.
Have you tried the TKM method?
Jonathan told me about that. And I listened to the podcast this morning. Yes. And so I was thrilled to learn about that. Everything, honestly, there's not been a program you've had that I have not learned something from. and am implementing. So yes, I've had my hands on Luke. I always have my hands on Luke, but learning specifically, where to put my
those acupressure and acupuncture points are amazing. The meridians are amazing.
Yes, and so what I'm just amazed at is the Creator who created us, who created everything. He knows the body. He certainly knows how to heal. And all these modalities, it's as old as time itself. We got away from all of what really worked. And, everyone is suppressed and on antidepressants. And honestly, I don't see that it's helping very much. It's not like curing anybody. And so,
well, it's so good that you're saying that. There's a big national conversation going on right now about what's happening with medicine in America. And I think it's been going on for 20, 30, 40 years. So I think it's been going on for a long time. And there's definitely a reset. So the conversation's expanding, right? Beyond conventional.
I can tell you, Virginia, when I was in Georgia with Luke, this word just kept coming to me. Pharmacology. I had never even heard the word. Now I looked it up and the word is pharmakia. And honestly, it's like witchcraft. All these drugs have so many side effects. And, the more I have been able to get Luke off of these things, the better I think he is. He was on so much medication. It is truly a miracle that Luke has survived.
Is he responding?
He does not follow commands. He has not spoken a word. He is either bedbound or we get him up with a Hoyer lift in a wheelchair. He knows me. He turns and looks at me. He'll sigh, so he is way more aware. When this happened, Luke, I don't know what level of consciousness he was in, but he was very, very, very far away. And you could tell to me that he's emerging more and more into consciousness. Now, as a mom, of course, I want to believe that. But other professionals see an improvement. But they told me in the beginning, there was no hope. That Luke was a vegetable. He would never get better. And I rejected that wholeheartedly. Absolutely did not believe that, did not receive it. Have fought tirelessly for him. And to God be the glory. God is the giver and taker of life. And he has Luke here for a reason. And so many people have heard about Luke and love Luke and pray for Luke. And it's just amazing. I know that God was preparing me well ahead of time.
How did you know that?
Well, I've been a Christian all my life and, spirit-filled believer. I depend on the Lord for everything. And everything he had been teaching me, even things I learned in R.E.S.T, I remember telling you, was just preparing me for this. This is the hardest thing I've ever gone through in my life. But I know that God is using it. God draws people to us that I'm able to, even just sharing the story, their lives are being changed. I have people tell me, I'm a different parent because of this. I don't take my children for granted as much anymore. I'm not a workaholic anymore. If you can have faith to get through this, so can I. And so I don't understand it all. And I wish that this would never have happened to my son. I cry a lot. As strong as my faith is, I'm a mama and that's my baby. And it's so, so hard. And so I trust completely in the Lord. And everything we face and go through, he has promised he will not leave me or forsake me. And he helps me through it. He truly is as real to me as you are. And I know that he led me to you and to what I would learn in R.E.S.T. And I can't say enough about it. I love you and so thankful for you.
Well, we haven't spoken in a long, long, long time, and it's been years now since we first met.
Yeah, it has.
But it's refreshing to know and to hear in the most practical way that you can find, I guess, words for, to explain how relational, emotional, and spiritual truth and the pursuit of that and understanding the value of your parts, your spirit, your soul, and your body, and dealing with the emotional brutality of the things we have to experience in the context of the relationship, right, within ourselves and our deepest convictions, our regrets and everything. And really calling a spade, looking at things for what they are, because I know you went through a horrible divorce right before all this hit. So when you think that reconciling all that really has been the instrument of change and healing for you, that's pretty remarkable. That's like something out of this world, right?
It is.
Because it's the antithesis of what you think would help. But tell us a little bit about that, because it wasn't just Luke's episode that would change the trajectory of his life and yours. It's the things that happened at home before he got sick.
Well, we did go way back. Learning in R.E.S.T about my mother's state of mind while she was pregnant with me affected me as a fetus. That just blew my mind because I had colic when I was a baby. And I still am a gut reactor. I can't eat if I'm upset. And so when I learned that, and I knew the condition of my mom when she was pregnant with me, she was going through a ton of turmoil, her and my dad. It was not good. And so while she was pregnant with me, I was just bathed in all of that chaos. And so to learn, oh my gosh, well, there was a reason I had colic. The whole house was in chaos. And, and it affected.
These disease states do not happen in a vacuum.
I had no idea that, and it makes so much sense now. That's what I said, when I've learned these things, I go back and I've pieced together so much more makes sense, as to why I was the way and why I am the way that I am and why, I have the attachment style that I have. With my story and my mom's story and my granny's story, and we start going back and you see these generational things I learned about in R.E.S.T. It helped me reconcile the confusion, chaos, and dis-ease. And
I bet it even helped you look at your divorce differently.
Well, I got married when I was 18. I dated him for 30 years before, and I was married for 28 years, and we have 3 children together. And we have had to come back together to take care of Luke. I lived in an apartment after the divorce. I moved. He kept the family home. And so I was in a second floor apartment when this happened to Luke. So the family home that he still had, that was our home, had to be modified to bring Luke home to. And so I was thrust right back into that environment, that relationship. And it has not been easy. We have more recently than before, been able to come to more forgiveness and tolerance of each other for Luke's sake. And that's a work of God. I can say things I've learned through R.E.S.T and dealing with things, reconciling things, coming to forgiveness. I don't know where all of this is going, Virginia. The story is still being written. As of today, Luke is still nonverbal. He still has a trach, a G-tube, and a condom cath. He's bedbound. But we love Luke and care for him. And
the TKM, the King's Method, Glenn King, and we did that segment. I think you may see miracles doing that work. I had a bedridden patient under 40 years old with 3 little children. And I'm telling you, she was at death's door. And they had to cancel their appointment with me multiple times because she ended up having to be rushed to the ER. She's in an intensive care room at the hospital. And I was able to go in and do a few scans that told me exactly what the emotional constitution of what she was holding on to was. So it really helped me and help her husband and the family. Because she's nonverbal, of course, and her stomach's bloating, the liver's shutting down, the kidneys are shutting down, the spleen is shot, everything is just collapsing. And Jonathan, our executive producer, he's become very well trained on the TKM method. And he's got a big story, he and Amanda, about the efficacy of the work of Dr. Cowden, the work of EVOX, the work of R.E.S.T, but all these components and healing. And I will tell you that this beautiful woman is sitting up and eating now and walking. Record the protocols you're doing with him on paper, at least, and take visuals before and after, because the fact Luke is still alive and responsive is a miracle. But I think the TKM and some of the things that Dr. Cowden might continue to have by way of suggestions in this, I think you're going to see a miracle. The body wants to live. Everything in the body is striving to sustain and advance life. And if you can manage to get a cradle so we can understand the emotional constitution of what he's holding on to, you might be able to have different conversations with Luke. And you may have a window into what you will have a window into his soul. And between that and affirmations, if you have a Zyto cradle, we'll be able to help facilitate healing, because remember, thoughts have power, but words have authority. So if we can get a narrative of what he's holding on to, and we can see where the obstructions are in him physiologically, wow, and then wow, I think you may be in for the surprise of a lifetime. And I want you to take it as a challenge, because I've seen miracles, and Jonathan is the best person. Between Jonathan, Dr. Cowden, and I, of course, will commit to do anything I can if you can get your hands on a cradle. But I think we can hard pause here because the story is still unwritten. His body is using an incredible amount of energy. And if you can help focus that energy and displace congestion just with the tip of your fingers and the touch, it is hours of work a day, but you're there anyway. I would encourage you to record before and after, because I have a sense we're going to see a miracle.
Yeah, I have always believed it. I still do. I believe with all my heart that Luke is going to be, we're going to see more miracles. He's already a miracle.
Out of millions of people that you could have listened to and heard, you ended up with us. And I just want to thank you for working so hard, for trusting us, and for really following the rhythm of R.E.S.T, because life's messy, and finding a rhythm that's consistent with laws of nature that are self-evident and appeal to our natural affections are so important in developing a heart of gratitude and thankfulness for all the good that we can access in spite of that pain. And I think that's the invitation to rest, so you can live free.
That is, I can tell you, gratitude. Gratitude is absolutely foundational. Gratitude absolutely changes your attitude and outlook, because it's so easy to look around and be sad and all the things that are wrong. But when you intentionally look around and just start thanking God for everything that you have, it really does change your heart and your attitude. I also wanted to mention the German New Medicine podcast.
Unbelievable.
And the doctors and his wife who had cancer after the death of their son.
Yeah, Dr. Hammer.
Yes, I mean, that was so.
His work is transformational, and I've mentioned it many times, but the 5 biological laws of German New Medicine, everybody should know them.
So I just keep thinking of lessons and podcasts that we went through, and I could never pick just one because they're all so important. I'm so thankful, so grateful that God led me to you. And Jane, God rest her soul.
Yeah, she's in all her glory now.
I know. I listened to the song, My God Did Not Fail, but
The Story I'll Tell.
Yes, the story I'll tell, my God did not fail. And, although I know it's not the outcome you wanted, she's where we all, are going to be when it's all over. So
we never want to say goodbye, but it was far beyond the outcome I anticipated. It exceeded my wildest expectations. Thank you, Kelly.
We hope listening to this episode has brought you closer to experiencing the freedom of wholeness and healing. If you have questions or comments about today's episode, or for updates about R.E.S.T, please visit our Instagram or Facebook at The Place of R.E.S.T. If you would like more information about Virginia, or to support and join the cause of R.E.S.T, please go to theplaceofrest.com/donate or call 949-289-5935. Thank you for listening to Rest with Virginia Dixon. We'll see you next week.